Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. I am so excited for this episode. I think it's super relevant to what's going on right now and the time of year we are at, aka the end of August / the beginning of school. I know a lot of schools open this week, and I just want to say to all you teachers, parents, administrators out there, I really hope you're keeping your head held high, being kind to yourself, and just remember that we can do this and we will get through it together. I've been thinking about you guys a lot. My virtual learning pod that I'm going to be doing this fall semester, we're starting next Monday, the 31st. And there's so much preparation that I've been doing. And as excited as I am, I'm still really nervous. So we are all doing our best right now. So yeah, big hugs to all of you out there. So our episode today is actually all about follow-up work. Now, if you're a Montessori teacher, you know the struggles of follow-up work. You also know the beauties of follow-up work. So follow-up work is what we guide, inspire, and encourage the children to work on. It is not assigned. It comes from the children's interests. It comes from their curiosity, from their energy. It is driven by them, their interests. We are just the guiding light to help them get there. And it takes a lot of patience and trust, but the outcome is incredible. And Jamie and I, we really wanted to talk about this to remind us and other Montessorians how important follow-up work is. In a time like quarantine, we're really, it's tough, right? Because we need children to, keep to a schedule, and there's been probably a lot more assigned work than we'd like. And while, it's the times and of course we can forgive ourselves for those things, it's really important to remember why we do what we do, why we do follow-up work, how it helps with independence. Okay, I'm saying too much. We talk about it all in the episode. It's amazing. You're going to love it. And I wanted to talk about our sponsor. So All Things Montessori is, brought to you by Patreon. So I've talked about Patreon a couple times on this podcast, but I wanted to talk about our new Patreon members. We have 3 new patrons, Andrea, Sarah, and Alex. Thank you guys so much. I'm so excited that we have a following now on Patreon, and I hope it continues to grow. So if you want to become a patron of All Things Montessori, it's super easy. I'm going to link it at the bottom of this page. And Patreon's incredible. So basically, you give a small monthly donation to All Things Montessori, aka Jamie and I. And this money, what it does, it just goes to helping us run the podcast. That's all. But with this donation, you get something in return. So there's 3 tiers that you can choose from. You can get an All Things Montessori sticker mailed to you in the mail. You get a shout out on the podcast, just like these 3 just did. And also you can get extra content. You can get a consulting session. You can get a direct message line to Jamie and I. There's tons of options, and it's super great, and we're so excited about it. And honestly, just thank you all. Thank you, Andrea, Sarah, Alex. Thank you so much, because without your support, we couldn't do this podcast. And with all the support of our community, man, oh man, we are so grateful for all your messages and your love and support. Our community, we are all in this together, as I say every single week, but I think it is just so important to remember that time and time again. We are all in this together. We're going to get through the school year together. And Jamie and I are here to just continue to provide this content to help us all get through it. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode all about follow-up work. Hey, Jamie, how's it going?
Great. How are you, Rach?
Oh, I'm good. I in our newsletter this week, which shout out, we have a newsletter weekly now, and you can subscribe to it on our website. Just a little plug there. In our newsletter, I announced that I'm going to be doing virtual teaching for a few families that their Montessori school is just unable to provide virtual support. And so one thing that I've been really thinking about is follow-up work ideas. Because fact of the matter is, while I can still have conversations with the children when I'm working with them, I can still inspire them. I think it's just good to have a list of
or just a collection of follow-up work ideas that you can just have at your disposal. Because we all know that feeling after you give a great lesson and you want to guide them to do something or perhaps help them get started with something. And then you're just like, what do I do? Do I do another booklet? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you always want to have new and exciting follow-up work ideas. So we thought we'd just chat about just some ideas that you can do during this COVID crazy time that can be fun for the children.
Totally. No, and I think it is, the big challenge for guides right now, if you're doing learning at a distance, teaching at a distance, is that you're not going to see the follow-up work.
Right.
So, and sometimes the follow-up work isn't something that is able to be, like, it's not written. There's no record of it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so if children go and read a bunch of sentences for interpretive reading and act out what the sentence says as their follow-up work for some reading comprehension and some drama activities, you may encourage that as follow-up, but you're not necessarily going to see it. And I certainly don't want children to feel like they have to record themselves doing stuff like this. So let's not get that idea.
No.
Keep in mind that sometimes you're not going to be able to see, but you can give some of those sort of activities as follow-up ideas. Why don't you read 10 more sentences or, something like that.
Absolutely. And that's so fun. And, this is where your collaboration with the parents come into play, because I think it's important for the parents you're working for to understand this exact thing we're talking about. Like, what exactly is follow-up work? What does it look like in a Montessori classroom? Because it can look like a lot of different things. And there's a lot of worry right now. So we want a lot of, proof that children are on track in this crazy time. But it's important to say, that not everything, exactly like Jamie said, doesn't need to be a written report of something. There will be those for sure. There will be group projects. There's going to be big work, hopefully, with this virtual learning space. Absolutely. But not all of it's going to be that.
Right.
Not all of it's and that's okay.
Right. So if a child is really interested in birds, then a follow-up work idea could be, so perhaps you've talked virtually about the body functions of birds or habitat of birds or how birds, meet some of their needs. And then the follow-up work could be that, the child's going to go and do some bird watching. And see if any of that knowledge can be validated through what they observe, or if there's anything new, some behavior that they weren't expecting to see. And maybe they'll write some of that down, or maybe they won't. But that's a great activity, and to do some serious bird observation if there's interest.
Absolutely.
In birds.
Mm-hmm. I think also all the botany. I've been looking at my biology album. I think encouraging children to go out on a nature walk, even in their front yard, because things are different right now, and collecting different kinds of leaves, or just go see how many plants you can find outside right now, or go see how many different stems you can see in your backyard. All of that is super valuable. And it gets them outside, and it's very thought-provoking. So along with what Jamie was saying with the birds, like I think biology is really adaptable to virtual, and with follow-up work, because they could just go right outside. Yeah,
right.
It's great.
Yeah, and even if you're living in a very urban environment with a lot of cement around you, there's usually somewhere a handful of trees planted or whatever. And you could do bark rubbings and leaf rubbings and other things like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's so fun too. So I think encouraging, I think one thing we've really been trying to hone in on recently is keeping that curiosity alive and keeping those interests alive in the child. And I think that's what they're missing so much of not being in the classroom and not being with their teacher. So if you're in some sort of a virtual space, or if you're doing homeschooling or whatever you may be doing, just getting to know what your child is interested in and then going off from there. You want to keep them on track. Of course, we're still going to do all the subjects, but maybe they're interested in ants. So you go find an anthill, or, I don't know. It's kind of endless. And a lot of this follow-up work can be that. It can be sketching of what they find. It could be just having a conversation with you about their findings. They could write a song about it. They can, booklet, I did way too many booklets for follow-up work because I like booklets. But I find that they're super fun, and the children like them too.
Posters.
Oh yeah, posters.
Dioramas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, plays and skits. There's any number of things they can do. If they're tracking the growth of something, they can, you can show them how to make a graph
Mm-hmm.
and use that to analyze the data that's collected. You could, poetry, any number of things that can be something that helps them sort of solidify the knowledge that they've gathered, or record, or share with others. Follow-up work shouldn't ever exist just for the sake of it.
Right.
It should be something that is either helping the children further their knowledge or solidify it, or because they're passionate about creating something that can show and share what they've learned. But I think the important thing to remember is that follow-up work shouldn't happen just because you think that children should follow up on everything you show them.
Right.
And so it could be that a child learns it in the lesson, and then why do they need to do follow-up work if they already understand it?
Right.
Like, why? What's the point? So that's something to be really careful of too. Don't fall into the habit of just thinking every lesson requires follow-up work, because it literally doesn't.
Well, and that's specifically hard right now, because I think there's a lot of pressure on teachers, to keep the kids busy. And honestly, I get it, because parents are having to work at home. It's not an ideal situation at all. Of course, I totally understand. But yeah, I think it's really important not to fall into that. Well, this is what you're doing today,
Right.
I think it just takes a little bit of time to help the child and, your students be accountable for their own learning and want to do those things. But once you lay that groundwork, then it just gets easier from there, because then they have that ownership of, oh, well, I did that last time because I chose to do it and I loved it. And, it's not being forced upon.
Yep. Yeah. Because I think if we do fall into that temptation of helping parents keep the children busy, what we end up with is children who are accustomed to being busy, and who only do what is told, what they're told to do. And they never create something bigger or more, or try something different, or explore further, because they're accustomed to being told what to do and then doing it. And so we don't want to fall into that trap that could be very easy to fall into during this time.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I've seen that even with my children as they transition to traditional mainstream public school, that they have fallen more into the habit of just doing what they have to do, rather than doing what is exciting to them, and they'll push to the reach as far as they possibly can. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's the sad, I hate it, but it definitely happens. Right. And it's okay. At least, your girls have so many interests and hobbies, that they, that they're still exploring those limits, right, in other areas.
Right. Right. But we want to be sure that we're being really careful, especially in this time with follow-up work, not to fall into that sort of traditional habit. And then we create a sort of work structure for children where I get a lesson, I do the required follow-up, and then I'm done. And I'd rather that I inspire children in a presentation to do something like crazy that I never would have thought of, and that they keep learning and keep digging and going deeper, not just fulfilling what I told them to do. So it's this weird balance of wanting to provide them a lot of options or ideas so they can be creative in their follow-up work if they want to follow up and there's something that excites them, while not making them feel like they have to follow up, and also that there's some particular product that we're looking for from them. So it's a delicate balance to maintain in regular life in the classroom. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think, to be honest, I think you might have to, if they're not accustomed to follow-up work, or perhaps they've kind of fallen off that sort of, routine, and they're starting up the school year again, you're going to have lessons where you're modeling what follow-up work is. You might have to do some of it with them, because they frankly don't know how to do it if you're not showing them how. So that's another thing to be prepared for is, okay, well, I'm going to do this lesson with them, but then we're going to do follow-up work together just to show them, right? And then from there, they can really, this sort of sounds obvious, but this was a learning lesson for me. I just thought they'd know what to do. And they did not, right? So modeling is super important. And then, having the trust that the children, maybe you just haven't found what inspires them yet. As Montessori teachers, we're constantly trying to figure out how we're going to get this concept across to each child, because every person learns differently. Every person has different interests. And perhaps you just haven't found that avenue yet with one of your students, and definitely just keep in contact with the parents. Because, again, there's so much worry right now of, well, if I don't see what my child's doing, then I just feel like they're not doing anything, and I have to work, and I'm frazzled and stressed, and it's a lot right now. So if you could just continue having contact with them, having your individual meetings with your children, I think you'll find a rhythm that's going to work. And hopefully, I think children, I would hope that they're pretty hungry for knowledge right now. Because life's kind of boring right now,
Right.
The world is not boring, but it's kind of boring in our houses right now. There's a lot more quiet and downtime. So you can really do some amazing work, I think, in this sort of slowed down world we're in right now.
Yep. Yeah. So be creative, be responsive, be thoughtful, and also be really respectful if children are working at home. We can't control the environment there. So there may be limitations to the sort of what they can do to follow up. And that's okay too. We have to just we just have to be patient with that. But yeah, thinking about how you inspire follow up instead of requiring, and getting, continuing to maintain that culture of excitement and curiosity that's going to make the work they choose to do after lessons and presentations, all the more amazing and extraordinary.
Yeah. And just encourage that creativity, right? Like, even if it's not really what you had in mind, or for parents, if it doesn't look the way that you really maybe thought it would, like, I think we have to be really careful right now not to criticize, or I don't think we need to be overly joyous at whatever they're doing. We need to still be matter of fact. But I think that encouragement is also really important right now, because I think children in some way are they miss out on that. Look what I did, and we're not going to say you did such a great job. We're just going to be like, wow, you made this poster of this plant. Wow.
Right.
They need that,
Yeah.
I think.
Tell me more about it. Tell me about
right.
this part.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I think that is the fuel to their fire. They're not in a classroom of 20 some children where everybody's like bouncing ideas off each other and collaborating and seeing what other people are doing and being inspired and all of that kind of stuff. They need that inspiration and that encouragement. And also, again, with you doing follow-up work with them in the beginning, you can also do your own follow-up work and show them if they need a little extra push, because then they might be inspired by what you're doing. So maybe you make a diorama or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's all about just, knowing where they can go. And I think when children know that they have free reign, not free reign, but they can be creative in their own follow-up work. That's, again, like you said, Jamie, that's when the magic happens. Tell that story of the children who did that work with the circles, who made that mobile or something?
We did circumference, and then they decided to trace a bunch of circles on beautiful paper. And there's circles of different diameters. They put they calculated the circumference and wrote the equation on the paper. And then they hung these circles from a mobile by lengths of string that corresponded to the length of the size of the circumference. So, the circle that was hanging from a string that was the length of its circumference. And so it's just beautiful and thoughtful. And I never would have thought to assign that or inspire them to do that, because I just never would have thought of it. But they created that. And so those are the kinds of things that you hope that you're encouraging children to develop their own ideas of how they could work with a concept or practice a concept or display knowledge of a concept. And you want them to do that and be able to have creative ideas around that. You might have to nurture it if they're not accustomed to it, but then really help them to feel confident, being inspired by their own work and not just filling out a worksheet or doing a writing assignment that's been assigned, something that really is sort of exciting to them.
Yeah. It's definitely tough, but the payoff is fantastic, and the children they gain so much from it. So definitely, keep that creative mind when you're thinking about follow-up work. Go back to your albums, think about, really interesting ideas that, we're in a different time right now. What is this going to look like? And just be patient. Again, be patient with the children and keep on inspiring them in new ways, because, a lot of it is just how it's presented to the children to spark that interest. You might just have to do it a different way, and that's okay. But we just wanted to do this little quick episode on follow-up work, because follow-up work is tough sometimes. You got to keep that energy up with inspiration. So I feel for everybody right now. But if you have any ideas about follow-up work that have worked, definitely share them with us. I'm always looking for new ones, new ideas. And everybody, just best of luck with all of that. And I'm sure this won't be the last episode we talk about follow-up work. So.
Right. And the big thing too is don't panic if you're not seeing it. It's okay. It's okay. Children are still learning, even if they're not showing it. So just be patient and really, when something catches their interest, they're going to do something. They'll do something with it. No question. So,
Absolutely.